I never thought my parents would betray me until after I gifted them a $425,000 private mansion for their 55th anniversary. I'm Sierra Langley, 28 years old, and I've spent most of my life working hard to build a future for myself. Growing up, my parents, Martin and Evelyn, always seemed caring to outsiders, but at home, it was different. They criticized almost everything I did and never took my dreams seriously. My brother Derek was always the favorite, and I was left feeling invisible, no matter how much I tried to impress them. I worked multiple jobs, studied hard, and made sacrifices I didn't tell anyone about, all to save money. Over the years, I quietly built enough to finally do something special for my parents, something I hoped would make them proud of me. I wanted to show them that I had made it on my own and that their youngest child could achieve something great. On the day of their 55th anniversary, I handed them the keys to the mansion. At first, they looked shocked and almost speechless. I watched their faces light up with surprise, and for a moment, I thought maybe this time things would be different. I hoped they would see all the hard work and love I had put into this gift, hoping it might finally bridge the distance between us. At first, they seemed genuinely thankful, talking about how beautiful the house was and how touched they were by the gesture. I felt a flicker of happiness, thinking maybe they truly appreciated me. But soon I noticed subtle changes. Small complaints turned into bigger demands. They started hinting that they deserved more, that the mansion wasn't enough. Derek, my brother, gave me a look that made it clear he didn't think I had done enough either. It hit me slowly, a realization that left a bitter taste in my mouth. The people I had worked so hard for, the people I wanted to impress, weren't grateful. They were taking what I had done for granted. Every criticism and sneer from my childhood came rushing back. I understood then that my gesture, no matter how grand, wouldn't change their true nature. Instead of confronting them, I chose to stay calm. I had prepared quietly, making sure that the mansion, although in their name, gave me control. As days passed, their entitlement grew, but every attempt to overstep was blocked without them realizing. They thought they were winning, but I was quietly in charge, and that gave me a sense of justice I had never felt before. Through this, I learned that even when people hurt you, your strength comes from how you respond, not from anger or revenge. I realized I didn't need their approval to prove my worth. I had achieved everything on my own, and their betrayal only made me stronger. It was painful, yes, but it also taught me that true victory lies in standing firm and valuing yourself, even when the people you love fail to do the same. When I think back to my childhood, it feels like I was always invisible in my own home. My parents, Martin and Evelyn, treated me like I was never enough, while my brother Derek seemed to do nothing wrong. No matter what I tried, it was never good enough for them. I remember telling them about my dreams and plans, only to have them laughed at or dismissed. They would tell me I was wasting my time or that I should be more like Derek, who could do no wrong in their eyes. Even in school, I worked hard and got good grades, but my parents never praised me. They refused to help with anything I wanted to pursue, saying it was too expensive or unnecessary. I had to find ways to pay for my own lessons and materials, while Derek got every opportunity handed to him. It was painful, but I kept quiet, believing that if I just worked hard enough, maybe one day they would see me. I remember the nights I cried alone in my room, feeling like no one cared about what I wanted or needed. My accomplishments felt small and unimportant in their eyes. They would constantly compare me to Derek, saying things like, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Or "He would never fail like you." Those words stuck with me, making me doubt myself for years. Even my friends noticed it. They would ask why my parents never cheered for me or celebrated my successes. I tried to shrug it off, but inside I carried a heavy hurt. It wasn't just about the opportunities one missed. It was the feeling of never being truly seen or valued by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. These memories never left me. They shaped the way I worked, the way I planned, and the way I dreamed. I learned to rely on myself and save quietly, building a future I could control. Deep down, I wanted to show my parents that all their criticism and favoritism wouldn't define me. I wanted them to see that I could rise above their dismissive behavior and prove my worth in a way they could never ignore. That hurt and invisibility from my childhood planted a seed in me, a quiet determination to succeed, not for their approval, but for my own. I wanted to make them realize one day that all their neglect and favoritism had only made me stronger. It wasn't about revenge at first. It was about showing them that I could accomplish something they never expected me to. That quiet determination eventually grew into a plan, a way to turn years of being overlooked into a moment where I could finally make them see me for who I truly was. In my 20s, life was never easy, but I knew I had to make it work on my own. I worked long hours at multiple jobs, sometimes going from one shift to another without a break. Most days, I barely had time to eat properly or rest, but I kept going because I wanted a future I could control. Every dollar I earned, I tried to save, even when it meant skipping small pleasures or nights out with friends. I made a lot of personal sacrifices. I lived in a small apartment, cooked my own meals, and avoided buying things I didn't need. Instead of spending money on clothes or parties, I invested it wisely, putting it into savings and smart opportunities that could grow over time. Every choice I made felt like a step toward the life I dreamed of, a life where I didn't have to rely on anyone who doubted me. At work, I pushed myself harder than anyone else. I took on extra projects, learned new skills, and slowly built a reputation for being reliable and ambitious. People started noticing my determination, and doors began to open. Promotions, small bonuses, and new responsibilities came my way, but I never let it make me complacent. I stayed focused on my long-term goal, independence and success that I could be proud of. Meanwhile, my parents continued to judge me from afar. They would comment on my choices, question my career path, or suggest I wasn't doing enough, even when I had already accomplished more than they could see. Their words stung, but I learned to use them as fuel. Instead of letting their criticism break me, I let it push me further, quietly proving that I could achieve what they never believed I could. Even when Derek would brag about his life or expect special treatment from them, I didn't compete. I focused on myself and my growth. Every penny saved, every late night at work, every difficult decision I made was building a life I could fully own. I wasn't working to impress anyone anymore. I was working to secure my own future and prove to myself that I was capable of more than their judgment had allowed. Over time, I could see the difference between us. While my parents stayed in their habits of judgment and favoritism, I was becoming independent, strong, and confident. I wasn't just surviving. I was creating a life that gave me freedom and power over my own destiny. That feeling of independence was incredible, but it also made me realize that all those years of being underestimated and dismissed had shaped me into someone they could never ignore. Looking back, I can see that all the struggles, sacrifices, and long hours weren't just about building money or success. They were about building myself. I became my own foundation, and no one's opinions, not even my parents, could shake the life I was quietly creating. Every choice I made, every sacrifice, brought me closer to the moment when I could finally show them that I was more than they ever expected. After years of working hard and saving every penny, I finally decided it was time to do something extraordinary for my parents. Their 55th wedding anniversary was approaching, and I wanted to give them a gift that would show just how far I had come. I had secretly saved enough to buy them a $425,000 private mansion, a place they could call their own and a symbol of everything I had achieved. I wanted them to see that I was capable, that I had grown into a woman who could make dreams real, even if they had doubted me for years. Planning the surprise took months. I didn't want anyone to know until the last moment, so I worked quietly behind the scenes. I hired a private realtor to help with the purchase, making sure every detail was perfect. I personally oversaw the decorations, choosing furniture, colors, and touches that I thought my parents would love. I wanted it to feel warm and inviting, a place that would make them proud and happy. I arranged a private reveal party for just the three of us and my brother, Derek. I wanted it to be intimate so they could feel the depth of the gift and the effort I had put into it. Every time I thought about the moment they would step into the house for the first time, my heart raced. I felt a mixture of hope, fear, and excitement. I hoped they would be genuinely moved, that they would finally see me not just as their daughter, but as someone capable of great things. Despite my excitement, I couldn't shake a small feeling of worry. My parents had always been critical, and I knew they could react in ways I didn't expect. What if they didn't appreciate it? What if they complained or acted entitled? I tried to push those thoughts aside, focusing on the joy I imagined seeing on their faces. I reminded myself that this gift was not just about them. It was also about me, my independence, and the life I had built despite years of neglect and doubt. On the day of the reveal, I arrived early, making sure everything was perfect. The lights were on, the furniture arranged, and the house smelled like fresh flowers. I felt a surge of pride as I thought about all the long nights and sacrifices that had led to this moment. I wanted my parents to walk in and feel the love and effort that went into every detail. Even as I waited, a small voice inside reminded me to be prepared. I knew that giving such a grand gift could bring unexpected reactions. Maybe they would be overwhelmed with gratitude, or maybe they would let their old habits show. I couldn't predict it, but I was ready to face whatever came. As I heard their car pull into the driveway, my heart pounded with anticipation. This was the moment I had dreamed about for years, the moment I would finally show my parents the result of my hard work and determination. I wanted it to be perfect, but deep down, I knew that no matter how much effort I had put in, their true colors might still surprise me. And in that uncertainty, I felt a strange mix of excitement and fear, ready to see how the story would unfold. The day finally came, and I could hardly contain my nerves. I waited at the mansion, watching as my parents' car pulled into the driveway. As soon as Martin and Evelyn stepped out, I saw the shock on their faces. Their mouths hung open for a moment, and their eyes were wide as they looked around at the house. For a second, it felt like all the hard work, the long nights, and the sacrifices had paid off. They were speechless, and I could see a flicker of excitement in their expressions. At first, they acted genuinely grateful. Evelyn hugged me tightly, and Martin patted my back, telling me how thoughtful the gift was and how proud they were. I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they truly appreciated me. But as we walked through the rooms, I started noticing little things that made me uneasy. Their eyes lingered on the furniture and decorations, not with admiration, but with a subtle sense of judgment, like they were calculating what they could change or improve. Derek, my brother, didn't hide his feelings at all. He made small, cutting remarks about the layout and the choice of decor, laughing lightly but with a hint of bitterness. He asked questions in a way that seemed innocent, but I could tell he was trying to make me feel insecure, trying to find flaws in the gift I had worked so hard to give. I realized he had always been jealous, but seeing it now in this moment, when I had given everything I could, stung more than I expected. As the day went on, my parents' initial excitement began to fade. I noticed the way Martin would glance at certain rooms with a critical eye, and Evelyn kept murmuring about how the place could be better if changed a little. I felt a sinking feeling in my chest. All those years of criticism, of being overlooked, were surfacing again. Their sense of entitlement, which I had hoped might have softened, was still very much alive. I tried to push down my disappointment, focusing instead on the effort I had made. But every glance, every whispered comment, and every small complaint made me realize that the people I had wanted to impress were still the same. I had hoped this gift would change them, make them see me differently, but the truth was becoming clear. Their gratitude was shallow, and their old habits of judgment and envy had not disappeared. By the end of the day, I felt a mixture of sadness and clarity. I understood that their reactions were not about me or the gift itself. It was about who they had always been. I had poured my heart into this surprise, and while it brought a moment of joy, it also revealed their true colors. I realized that no matter how much I gave, their greed and entitlement could not be easily changed. That moment, though painful, opened my eyes and prepared me for what I would need to do next. After the initial excitement of the reveal, things quickly started to change. My parents, who had seemed so grateful at first, began to take the gift for granted. Every little detail I had carefully planned suddenly became something they wanted to criticize. Evelyn frowned at the color of the curtains and said they were not exactly what she would have picked, while Martin kept suggesting that some rooms needed better furniture, or that it could be bigger. I tried to smile and brush it off, but inside my chest tightened with disappointment. Their words were sharp, though wrapped in polite tones. "You really went all out, Sierra, but you know we've earned more than just this, don't you?" Evelyn said one evening as we walked through the kitchen. Martin added quietly, "It's a nice gesture, but it's not exactly what we deserve after everything we've done for you over the years." I felt my heart sink. Every effort I had made, every sacrifice, every sleepless night and penny saved seemed invisible to them. Even Derek joined in, making small jokes that cut deeper than he probably realized. "Nice house, Sierra," he said with a grin. "Too bad it's not perfect, but I guess you tried." The envy in his tone was obvious, and it made my chest tighten with a mix of anger and hurt. All these years, I had worked so hard to prove myself, and now, the people I had hoped to impress were mocking my efforts, or at least not seeing the love behind them. I felt trapped between heartbreak and anger. It wasn't just about the house. It was about everything it represented. I had given them the best I could, hoping it would finally earn their respect or at least a moment of genuine gratitude. Instead, their entitlement and greed were on full display, reminding me of all the years I had been overlooked and dismissed. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, but I held back. I knew that reacting would only give them the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. Instead, I let the words hang in the air while I clenched my fists quietly. The realization hit me hard. All my sacrifices, my struggles, and my hard work had been for them, and yet they still saw it as nothing more than a gift that could be criticized or improved upon. In the quiet moments, I kept asking myself how people who were supposed to love and support you could act this way. My heart ached with betrayal, but beneath it, a small spark of determination grew. I understood that their reactions were not about me. They were about who they were. It hurt, but it also reminded me why I had worked so hard in the first place. To create a life I could control and a power they could never take from me. As the days passed, their complaints and hints that they deserved more became more frequent, and each one reminded me of my lifelong struggle to be seen. I felt pain, yes, but also a quiet resolve. I realized that their inability to appreciate me was not my failure. It was theirs. And in that realization, a plan began to form in my mind, though I didn't know yet how far I would take it. After seeing how my parents reacted to the mansion, I realized that confronting them directly would do nothing. Their greed and entitlement were too deep, and I knew that arguing or trying to make them see my side would only lead to more disappointment. Instead, I decided to take a different approach. I needed a way to protect myself and show them, quietly, that their behavior had consequences. I began making careful arrangements to retain control over the mansion without them knowing. I worked with a lawyer to include clauses that gave me the final say over important decisions, ensuring that even though the house was for them, I still had power over it. I also set up the finances so that any attempt to sell or misuse the property would require my approval. It was a delicate balance. I wanted to let them feel ownership, but I needed to protect the work and sacrifices I had poured into it. Even as I set up these protections, my emotions were a storm. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied, to finally see my parents realize that their behavior had consequences. But another part of me felt heavy with sadness. I had hoped for love and appreciation, not a battle of control. I wrestled with these feelings, feeling both strong and fragile at the same time. I found myself replaying their words and expressions over and over in my mind. The way they criticized the curtains, the furniture, and even hinted that they deserved more. It all fueled a quiet fire inside me. I wanted them to understand, in some way they couldn't ignore, that I was not the child they had dismissed for years. Every careful move I made in setting up the legal protections felt like a step toward reclaiming that power. At the same time, I felt a strange mix of guilt and relief. I knew I was taking control in a way that might seem cold, but I also knew it was necessary. I had given them something incredible, something that represented years of my hard work, and they had treated it as if it wasn't enough. I had to act, not out of anger alone, but to protect myself and to assert the value of what I had accomplished. In private, I allowed myself to feel the weight of all the years I had been overlooked, criticized, and dismissed. Each small legal detail I arranged became a symbol of my independence and my strength. I wanted closure, but I also wanted them to realize, eventually, that generosity without respect could never be taken for granted. By the end of the week, everything was in place. I had created a quiet, invisible boundary around the mansion that ensured my parents could enjoy it, but they could not take advantage of me. I felt a sense of calm determination. I wasn't seeking revenge for the sake of being cruel. I wanted justice in the form of respect and acknowledgement. That internal struggle, between heartbreak, anger, and the desire for closure, gave me a sense of purpose. I knew I was finally in control of the situation, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. After setting up the legal protections, I waited to see how my parents would react. It didn't take long. Soon, Martin and Evelyn began testing the boundaries. They argued over furniture choices, complained about the size of certain rooms, and even suggested selling parts of the property to make better use of it. They spoke as if the mansion belonged entirely to them, ignoring the years of effort I had poured into it. Derek, of course, encouraged them, making comments that fueled their sense of entitlement and belittled my role in the gift. At first, it stung to hear them treat the house like it was theirs alone. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I forced myself to remain calm. I knew I had done everything quietly to protect myself, and now it was time to let those preparations work. I began intervening subtly. Every attempt they made to sell or change something important was blocked by the arrangements I had put in place. I didn't confront them directly. Instead, I used the clauses and financial safeguards I had carefully set up to quietly take control of the situation. The dramatic irony of it all wasn't lost on me. My parents thought they were winning, that they were calling the shots and making the mansion their own. They had no idea that every move they made had already been anticipated and prevented by me. Their confidence, their smugness, and their sense of superiority only made me feel a quiet satisfaction. I didn't need to argue or prove anything in words. The results spoke for themselves. As days turned into weeks, the pattern became clear. Martin and Evelyn tried to act like they were in charge, making lists of changes and improvements, imagining themselves as the true owners. Derek even suggested renting out parts of the house without consulting me, thinking he could bypass my control. But every step they took, every attempt to manipulate the property, was quietly stopped by the safeguards I had put in place. Watching them struggle to assert authority while I remained in control was bittersweet. Part of me felt a pang of sadness because I had hoped they would appreciate the gift, not misuse it. But another part of me felt a deep, satisfying sense of justice. For years, they had taken me for granted, overlooked my efforts, and treated my sacrifices as insignificant. Now, without them even realizing it, I was quietly proving my power and independence. It wasn't about cruelty or revenge in the usual sense. It was about recognition and boundaries. They saw my generosity as weakness, but in reality, it had been the key to giving me control. I felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. Pride for the careful planning and the control I had gained, and sorrow for the fact that the people I had given everything to were incapable of gratitude. By the end of it, the mansion became a symbol, not of what they owned, but of what I had earned. Every attempt they made to assert themselves was quietly blocked, and I could finally see that years of hard work, sacrifice, and patience had allowed me to turn the situation completely in my favor. I had won, not through confrontation, but through quiet strategy, and the feeling of that bittersweet victory was more powerful than anything I could have imagined. After weeks of watching how my parents tried to take control of the mansion, it became clear that they were finally starting to realize something was wrong. Their confident, entitled attitudes began to crack. Evelyn's frown deepened, and Martin's voice lost its usual certainty whenever they suggested changes. I could see the shock in their eyes when they discovered that the things they had been trying to do were blocked, that their attempts to assert authority were being quietly controlled. For the first time, they understood that they had underestimated me. Derek's behavior also began to catch up with him. His constant jealousy and attempts to undermine me started backfiring. People he had relied on for favors began to notice his arrogance, and he lost credibility with those who mattered. He tried to push his parents into siding with him, but Martin and Evelyn were now too preoccupied with the reality that Sierra was in control. Derek's attempts to manipulate the situation only made his envy more obvious, and his own failures became a lesson in pride and impatience. Watching all of this unfold, I felt a mix of emotions. I remembered every long night, every sacrifice, every moment of feeling unseen and undervalued. It was painful to remember how little my parents had cared about my dreams and achievements for so many years. But at the same time, I felt an incredible sense of empowerment. I had taken all of that hurt, all of that dismissal, and turned it into strength. I had worked hard, been patient, and planned carefully, and now the tables had turned in a way that words alone could never achieve. I reflected on my journey and realized how much I had grown. I had learned that even the people who are closest to you can betray you, even the ones you love the most. It hurt deeply, but it also taught me something important. Patience, careful planning, and belief in yourself can change even the most difficult situations. I had been underestimated my entire life, but instead of letting it crush me, I used it to build a life and a position where I could finally stand strong. There was a strange satisfaction in seeing my parents' shock and Derek's disappointment. I didn't need to shout or argue to prove myself. The quiet control I had built spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. It was a subtle victory, one that came from my resilience, my planning, and my refusal to be defined by their judgment or envy. In that moment, I understood the truth about family and respect. Generosity can be mistaken for weakness, and love can be taken for granted, but personal strength and determination cannot be ignored. I had turned years of pain and neglect into something powerful. The mansion, while a gift to my parents, became a symbol of my independence and strength. I had won not just the control of the house, but a sense of closure, a recognition of my own worth, and the realization that I could overcome even the people who were supposed to love me the most. After everything had unfolded, I knew I had to make a decision about my relationship with my parents. I realized that keeping close contact with them would only bring more disappointment and stress. Their entitlement and constant criticism were not likely to change, and I had learned that protecting myself was more important than trying to win their approval. I decided to maintain limited contact, checking in only occasionally, enough to stay polite, but not enough to let them affect my peace of mind. I left the mansion in their hands in a way that allowed them to enjoy it, but I made sure the legal protections I had set up stayed in place. They could live there, but they could not sell or misuse it without my consent. This meant that, while they felt like they had control, the reality was that I still held the power. It was a quiet way to let them experience the consequences of their greed and entitlement without confrontation. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. I no longer carried the weight of needing my parents' approval or worrying about their judgment. I had built a life on my own terms, and no one could take that away from me. Every sacrifice, every long night of work, and every careful choice had led me to this moment. I felt a sense of pride that was hard to describe, a feeling of independence that was stronger than any approval I had ever sought. The mansion, the gift I had given, had become more than just a home for my parents. It became a symbol of my journey, my perseverance, and my ability to turn hurt into strength. I could finally see that my success was not measured by how others treated me, but by how I respected and valued myself. I had taken the betrayal and disappointment from my childhood and turned it into something that gave me power, control, and peace of mind. Even though my parents had treated my generosity as weakness, I had quietly shown that I was stronger and wiser than they had ever expected. I no longer needed their recognition to feel accomplished. I had proven to myself that patience, careful planning, and self-belief were far more powerful than any argument or confrontation could ever be. In the end, I felt an emotional closure that I had never imagined. The pain of the past, the betrayal, and the years of feeling invisible no longer controlled me. I had taken control of my life and my future. I could finally embrace my independence fully and know that I had triumphed over the people who had once underestimated me. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't anger or confrontation. It's living well, stronger than anyone ever expected. That was my victory, and for the first time, it felt completely mine. Do you think Sierra made the right choice by keeping her distance from her parents? Or should she have tried to repair their relationship? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your opinion. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out.